Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karim Fatehi. I'm the Interim Chief Executive of London Chamber of Commerce. It gives me a pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon session on sustainable development ahead of COP28, Climate Summit in UAE later this month. This session will examine how the Arab world today stands right at the center of global efforts to meet the goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement on climate changes. Following on from COP27 held in Sharm El Sheikh, Egypt in 2022, COP28 is set to open the Expo City Dubai on 30th November 2023, end of this month, where bold, practical, and ambitious solution will be reviewed and discussed, agreed to reduce the emission. That will meet our international obligation and secure sustainable development for the region and the rest of the world. I would like to emphasize UK is a global leader in driving action on climate, and London is both a center for green finance and home to an innovative technology ecosystem which is helping to generate new climate solutions. At London Chamber of Commerce, LCCI, we work in partnership with chambers in the Arab and wider world to foster accelerated collaboration towards a green transition which is at the core and economic transition. And I'm so delighted to be chairing in this discussion in which we will hear from leading experts on how COP28 agenda and sustainable development prioritize, go hand in hand, leading to greater opportunities for economic growth and prosperity. With us today, we have an esteemed panel. On my left, Patricia Yates, Chief Executive of VisitBritain, and then Mr. Khalid Al Marzooqi, Vice President, International Business Development at Khalifa Economic Zone, Abu Dhabi, Kizad Group, Rabih El Fadel, CEO of the ZEF Concept and CEO and co-founder of Viola Earth at ZEF. And on my right is Mr. Nick Thurlow, board member of MBS Green. So, listeners, I would like to invite Patricia to address us as the first speaker.
Thank you. Shall I? I'll stand up. So I can get closer to you. So my name is Patricia Yates, and I'm the CEO of the National Tourism Agency, Visit Britain and Visit England. And it's a privilege to be with you today. We are navigating a world of great change. We all recognise that sustainability needs to be at the heart of what we do, and it's a journey that we're on together. Just let me tell you why tourism is so important. It's important as an economic driver. It supports about 200,000 small businesses in the UK. It contributes £127 billion annually to our economy, with those economic benefits spread right across the nations and regions of Britain. And tourism connects people. It connects people all around the world. It ties countries closer together, builds bridges between countries and cultures, and promotes mutual understanding. So it is in all our interests to build a resilient, sustainable, and accessible industry. What's our role as the Tourist Board? Well, we want to drive that thriving industry, creating economic prosperity across Britain. That means supporting supply side, educating the small business about how they can become more sustainable. So we're building a pipeline of sustainable products, and then internationally making sure we're promoting regional and seasonal spread so those benefits are spread right across the country. If you look at the structure for that, I would put that into 3 areas. The first thing is getting the right structure. So across England, we are restructuring our destination management organisations into a much more simplified and tiered structure with destination development partnerships at the top, bringing together groups of local visitor economy partnerships. About 40 local visitor economy partnerships, about, say, 10 DDPs. And that is a change from the 200 to 300 destination management organisations we have at the moment. Then we have to get the right support to industry. So we're building the strategy for Visit England, leading on the sustainable strategy for England, underpinned by the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, and built around regenerative tourism, so not just sustainable, but leaving places better with tourism than they were before. Our focus is on how to support small and medium enterprises navigate this landscape, so being a trusted voice both to industry and to consumers. Because we know that building the supply of sustainable products and informing consumers, we see a huge increase in consumers who are interested in sustainability, but they want to be guided and given access to products that are just as good because they're sustainable as the luxury and relaxing products that they are used to. So turning to our role at Visit Britain, how can inbound tourism support in building a resilient, accessible and sustainable visitor economy? We promote Britain through the Great campaign, and sustainable tourism is absolutely a linchpin for that. We work with our partners, Visit Wales, Visit Scotland, Visit England and London and partners, to make sure that we are pulling through sustainable product and that we're looking at where we promote at what time of year. So making sure that we're spreading the benefits of tourism right across the nations and regions and extending the season. We have a very seasonal tourism industry here. So building the industry out at the shoulder seasons helps the industry become more economically sustainable. So the GCC countries are one of our most important and valuable visitor markets. Visitors from the GCC already stay longer and spend more than other visitors, spending nearly £2 billion in 2022. However, while they're keen to explore more of Britain, they tend to be very London-centric. So building the products that will help visitors explore more, and then telling consumers. One of our first DDPs is in the northeast of the country. Now you will know that the football club there has links now with the Gulf, and of course the airline flights are going there as well. So helping to build that knowledge and those links with an area of Britain that really punches below its weight in inbound tourism. We work with partners to convert that inspiration to bookings, and in the Gulf we particularly work with WeGo, and we've seen a 78% rise in searches from Riyadh to Newcastle and a 63% rise in searches for Manchester, so telling the stories of lesser known destinations. But there is more we can do, always. So looking at the Gulf, 74% of visitors said they wanted to know more about sustainability and be able to make easy, sustainable choices. One of the commonest cited barriers was that lack of information. So that's something that we will be looking at in our promotional activity over the next year. How do we tell that story? And by highlighting how visitors can enjoy a more responsible stay, we hope they will stay longer, spend more, travel widely, use low carbon transport, and explore out of season. So, this can only be achieved, of course, if we all continue to work together, exchanging knowledge, sharing research and insights, learning and listening as we navigate this journey. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from my other panelists and to taking your questions afterwards. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Patricia. That was a very powerful message. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Mr. Khalid Al Marzooqi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say that I am honored to be a part of this panel sessions, and also I would like to extend my thanks and grateful to the Arab UK Chamber of Commerce for arranging such amazing event and connecting all of us. My topic, as you see from the slide, will be focusing on one of the exciting events that coming soon to the market, that coming soon actually to the world, just 10 days away from today. It is about the COP28. COP28 will focus on 4 main areas. First of all, the fast-tracking energy transitions. Why most nations, as you know, that are putting huge investments to transfer to green energy. UAE aim to produce over 11,000 gigawatts from renewable energy in the year of 2030. Second, fixing climate financing. UAE is working with a number of financial institutions, including World Bank, to standardize the carbon market and provide incentives, especially to the private sectors. The third one, as you see here, is talking about natural people lives. In this area, the COP28 will be focusing mainly in the welfare of the human being, protections of the environment across the world, and it will dig in deep to talk about the challenges facing in terms of the health and the food challenge. The fourth and the last area is called inclusivity. In summary, all the new initiatives that we are discussing during the sessions and previous sessions has to integrate with the existing practices. For example, today, when we talk about the traditional sector energy, those sectors has to integrate with the new emerging energy sectors. And one of the main points that will be focused in COP28 will be the importance of the important role that the youth can play in driving all those initiatives. UAE sustainability initiatives, as I have been dealing, I think, with many multinational companies over the last, I would say, 2 decades, I can say that most advantage that UAE provides is that you are within a stable and growing economy. This allowed all the companies that they are to have an easy way of transferring and adapting to the new regulations and to transfer their productions to be more sustainable following all the world and the international standards. As you see from this slide, the 2050 strategy of UAE is to reach to net zero emissions, and UAE continuously growing the sector 4 to 5% every year. In Abu Dhabi Ports Group, we operate several ports and economic zones, both in UAE and outside of UAE. We were a pioneer in introducing the green energy and continue to lead in these sectors. And most of our strategy focus on circular economy, which is actually to have the best use of your available resources. Several of the customers that we have that based in our economic zones today, they are exporting to UAE, they are exporting to the European regions, and in order today, as you know, that there is a mandate for those companies that they need to have a green certificates. which we have an agency that actually are able to issue, because those companies are able to get the green energy and they are able to get the green certificates, which allow them to enter UK and other markets. Now, one also of the main strategy that we have emphasized and focused in the last years is actually creating clusters among different sectors that we have. Today we have 17 sectors. We can accommodate most of the industrial, trade, logistics sectors. Here I'm listing only 6 sectors, which I want to highlight just a few examples to show that how we are moving forward from the traditional practice all the way to the new sustainable requirements. For example, in the metal clusters, we have created something called hot metal road. Hot metal road is connecting the producers of the metals, the producers of aluminum, steels, to the raw material. And for example, the aluminum smelters, they are able to transfer their products, their raw material, to those manufacturing companies as a liquid using the hot metal rods. Those companies, they are saving, because they are getting the raw material as a liquid, they are saving more than 30% in terms of the cost that comes from the energy consumption. And this is, for sure, has very huge and positive impact on the environment by reducing 30% of the energy supply. Another example I want to speak about is the food park. What we have done in the food park, that the government of Abu Dhabi has provided many incentive subsidies, especially in the technology side, in order to increase productions using lower resources when it comes to the produce of the food. And this is definitely, first of all, is to part of the regulation, and also to meet the consumption demands both in the local and the international market. One more example I want to mention about, as you see here from the slide, is the polymers, the last one, which is the polymers park. In the polymers park, we have built what we are, it's like one single largest polymers distribution center. Around this polymers distribution center, today there is a 20 manufacturing company that are sourcing. Those companies in the past used to be all over the world, used to be in Far East Asia, used to be in Europe. Currently, we actually attracted those companies to be next to the center of the raw material. This is definitely will save a lot of the transportation for those companies, which will reflect in the protections of the environment, because you don't have a lot of transportations happen by road, by sea, and by air. And another thing that those companies are able to use just-in-time approach. So they just source the material whenever they need. They don't need to have those fancy and big logistic space. And because they are saving a lot of money, because they don't need to have those logistic and warehousing space, we are encouraging this company to put more money in the research development, especially for things related to the sustainable energy. In my last slide, I just want to mention that all our efforts in the past years, actually, we have received several awards, and 2 months ago, we are proud that we received award from the United Nations for the category of promotion investment in the energy transmissions. Thank you very much, and wish you a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Khalid. That was really insight, detail on the economy zone. Fadel, please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rabih El Fadel. I'm the founder of ZEF Concepts and the co-founder of Phyla, which is mainly today what we're going to present. Phyla is a company that came a few years ago from a number of colleagues of mine, similar mind, that very much project what we wanted at the next stage of our life. We are a few founders in the company. Myself, been working in sustainability for a long, long time. My journey started with the construction industry, greening the construction industry, and more going into what we call it sustainability framework. setting up sort of targets for energy, for water, for waste, for ecological landscape and procurement strategy and pollution in the finest details as an engineer. I've been asked years after that to join a team headed by the UN and some Ministry of Environment in Africa to look after the Green Wall, the Great Green Wall of Africa, which is alongside the Sahel, which is about 8,000 kilometers. From an engineer, suddenly I start to get more into biodiversity and understanding the importance of it and getting involved in a number of projects. That project led me to meet my colleagues, Harry Vernon and Ben Wu, Latha and Chandradeep, and we set up the company. I don't know if the team can just show first the video after this.
What if there was a way to restore degraded landscapes? And what if the solution provided sustainable livelihoods, was able to feed people and power communities and economies? Phyla elite pongamia trees produce food and fuel and fertilize themselves. They can grow in regions of the world where rainfall is limited and where climate change threatens agricultural production systems. Phyla's elite pongamia trees build healthy soils. They remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and they bring back biodiversity to landscapes that have been devastated by deforestation, monocropping and mining.
Pongamia has incredible uses in rehabilitating mine sites because of its metal toxicity thresholds. It can start an ecosystem going, which is often what we need. So growing a plant in an ecosystem that's tolerant to the soil conditions that other plants can't bear allows us to start generating carbon and mycorrhizal networks and microbial processes and litter decomposition processes, including nutrient cycling within the soils. And Pongamia may become one of the key tools in rehabilitating and remediating toxic legacy waste from mining.
Dr. MVR Prasad, member of the Phyla team, has been instrumental in the commercialization of Phyla elite Pongamia agroforestry systems.
Namely 1972 and 1974 and 1979, they were all very bad years. 500 villages, they escaped the pangs of the drought. And each of these villages had a lot of plantations of Pongamia around their homes as well as around their fields and all that. That is the beauty of Pongamia. In spite of acute drought, the tree doesn't succumb.
Phyla is unique, having established operational facilities in both India and sub-Saharan Africa.
We have successfully grafted close to 1 million elite Pongamia in one production cycle. And that too with absolute precision quality, with standard operating procedures, ensuring that it's completely compliant and completely world-class.
The Phyla team have been working for over 25 years to build a portfolio of high-yielding varieties that are able to cope with the toughest of environments. We have developed close ties with domain experts from leading universities in the UK to develop processes and products to maximise the value of each seed.
Green technologies which we have developed at the center, how to maximize the yield of current gene, Pongamol, which will help us in developing some novel products for cosmetic industry, food industry, as well as pharmaceutical industry.
Our facilities in India and Southern Africa are gearing up to produce 1.5 million saplings next year, then scale to meet a growing demand worldwide.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to go very fast through these sort of slides. I know the time is against us. But to tell you why we mentioned this specific species, when you're setting up your framework of sustainability, even when you're doing your SDG target, the 17 goals with the key parameters to reach, one main issue is to know how, A, to optimize, prioritize, and making sure that you have attractors and you have a main sort of anchors. Throughout that career, you will need to search every time for what is an attractor, what is an anchor. And this species in particular, the Pongamia itself, it's been searched for years and years. It's been proved that it's been fighting drought, helping the biodiversity. And the example that you see there, it was on a copper mine in Zambia. Just to give you a story very briefly about it, I'm just, again, as I said, I'm going to jump this very quickly. I think the most important is that picture that everyone is asking us for, and it's the proof in the pudding. This is a site, it's a copper mine in Zambia. Nothing is growing there. Our co-founder, Ben Wall, moved to Zambia years ago, and he worked on this mine here to see how to regenerate it, proving the story right, rather than just sitting down designing it. This is 4,000 trees that we set up on that site, planted 2016, 2017. Doesn't need much water. And it was 4,000 trees, only maybe 10 or 15 trees died the first year. Nothing died after that. It's been replaced. And if you look at it, this is how the transformation happened. It's been set on a site where the last 2023, even 2022 before and 23 here, this is during the dry season, 23 dry season here, we found rabbits, we have snakes, we have bees, and there is nitrogen fixing inside. The trees are creating a good molecular sort of connectivity underground, and fungi. The beauty of it is with this biodiversity, it allows for intercropping. So here we're talking about biodiversity connected to circular economy, engaging communities, having connection with the international community on the food security as well, especially in where I worked on the Sahel side of it. We're talking about 7,000 kilometers just in the Sahel. Our aim in Phyla is, and this is us, three of us, me, Harry, one of my partners is here, so I'm not sure if he can raise his hand. Here he is, there. So this is us on site at the beginning of the year. I think the aim for Phyla is to go millions of hectares. I just came back from West Africa negotiating with some governments. We're going to the COP as well to talk about it, but it's far beyond that species. It's talking about a multitude of measures that will come into it, making sure that insurance companies, the financial sector, the civil servant, governments, and multi sort of stakeholders are part of it. I think I will leave it to that, but maybe just for you to understand, this tree that we had ticks number of boxes. Drought tolerant, it's unbelievable. Even now we have MOUs and framework with number of universities. We are doing or working on a couple of IPs. Even the universities were a bit excited and surprised with what's going on there. So it's drought tolerant, and it comes from a story since the 70s when that tree actually made farmers sustain themselves. Wherever they have the trees, it was by far better than other sort of villages. Having said that, we work on over 100,000 trees for us to really look at the elite that commercially can work properly and can have number of times its productivity. It's nitrogen fixing, so it is by itself a fertilizer, and it does enhance the soil around it. It's carbon removal, topsoil, underground, and it's a deep-rooted sort of trees. That means it takes the carbon deep inside the soil. It will have a better time lag in terms of carbon emission. It's salinity, so it's a leguminous sort of tree, but it's similar to the mangroves. And we are testing even different sort of phenotypes that we have. By the way, phyla, already we have 75 phenotypes. We're working, it's phyla elite trees, we call it, and we're still working on more. And it's a non-invasive, and that is a key when we are discussing this tree different places. Time is against me, so I'm not going to talk too much. I think that's enough. And please, by all means, you can ask me any question later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabih. Very interesting on the ecosystem. Now I've got Nick to address us. Thank you, Nick.
See if the green buttons work. Once we get, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Nick Thurlow. I'm the Group CFO of MBS Global Investments and also board member of MBS Green, and that's what we're going to talk to you about today. Very briefly, to cut you on what one of my colleagues said earlier, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the goals of COP28, highlight a couple of the challenges, take a look at the Arab world's role in the climate change area, and then briefly, in about 7 minutes, I'm going to try and give you an idea of how to solve the whole climate problem, so nothing too big. If you bear with me for a second, there's an old adage in the live TV industry that says, don't work with children or animals, because you never know how they're going to react. The equivalent in the conference space is audience participation. So I thought about this long and hard, but I thought, if you're in the climate environment, we should take a risk. So I'm going to ask you to put your hand up if you think you know what the word COP means. Please put your hand in the air if you think you know what COP means. There's not many, but keep going. You're a very intelligent audience here. I'm sure we do know. If you think the C is for climate, you can put your hand down. COP stands for Conference of the Parties. Now, there's a few of you who had your hands up then. Keep them up, because the next question's coming. It's a three-parter, very quick. You know the answer. The Kyoto Protocol. Who knows what the key goals of the Kyoto Protocol were? I don't know what they are either, really, so if you've got your hand up, you can keep it there. The last one is a tiebreaker for you two. There's two tiebreaker here. So Paris Agreement, 50-50. Was it a 1.5% goal or a 2% goal? No, it wasn't. It was 2, with a goal for trying to get 1.5. So there you go. Now, the reason I brought this up is that the whole area of climate change and green is a very complex topic, and it's nearly impossible to understand all of it. I've been putting myself through this for the last year and have learned a few key things which I want to share with you today. So as we saw previously from Khalid's slide, these are the 4 key agenda items for COP. They're broken down to change. We have to change. I think we all understand now that we have to change our behavior to solve the climate problem. Funding, which I'll come on to, which I think is the key problem of how and why we haven't done it to date. The third part is to protect the environment and people. And then on the inclusivity part, it's about the future. I would say in general, we're all a certain age in this room. The people who will really solve this problem are the generation or 2 below us. And I think the key part of COP is to make sure that that generation is empowered. The president-designate of COP is Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber. This was a quote I read from him probably 3 months ago, and it made me really think about why a solution has been so difficult. And the issue is it's because it's expensive. There's no cheap solution to solving the climate problem. And I think COP28, I hope, will start to address that. The real problem is when you start to realize what the numbers involved are, they get very big. So COP27, Sheikh Al-Sharm, started the, God, I forgot the name now, the Loss and Damage Fund. It was probably the key piece out of COP27. I think COP28 will build on that and have a solution. The cost of the Loss and Damage Fund is about $2.4 trillion a year. Now, that is not a small number. How do you go about solving $2.4 trillion? That's what COP has to tackle in the next few weeks. The reason they have to do it is if we don't do it, the cost of doing it is actually way higher. Look at the numbers here. It could be $178 trillion. This is from Deloitte. When you talk about numbers of 7.6% cutting your GDP, that's the difference between people will be able to eat, sleep, feed themselves. It's a massive change. It'll change the world if we don't address it. I think that's the realization that COP is coming to, is that the magnitude of the problem is we have to do something. So this is a little busy slide, but this is just a snapshot of some of what the countries in the Arab world are doing. I think the key thing to start to solve a problem is to define it. So as I sort of mentioned with the quick Q&A, was there are lots of terms in climate change: net zero, sustainability, lots of goals. These countries here have all at least set a net zero target. Each one has a different way of getting there, what they're trying to achieve. The country which has the earliest target right now, is with an asterisk, is Norway. They've actually announced a net zero of 2050, but they're going to have an offset with carbon credits to achieve net zero by 2030. So if you are bold, you can do it. So I think the message out of COP will be bold. Make a statement and then try and stick to it. It's not just governments. Here are two well-known companies I think you're aware of, ADNOC and Aramco. ADNOC is making significant investments in green hydrogen. They've announced a net zero target of 2045. I think it's going to be tough, but they've announced it, and that's good. That's better than not doing it. Aramco, as I said, with Norway, carbon credits has been a very interesting, contentious subject, but it is part of the solution. Aramco is participating with PIF in carbon credit offsets, and I think it's going to play an increasing role moving forward. Another big example I saw just the other week, and I put this up here, was PIF's investment into electric vehicles and charging. I think governments look at a lot of B2G solutions saying we need help. I think PIF has done a very good job here. They've said, look, we're going to build 5,000 charging stations because why wait? So if you're going to seize the moment, just do it, and they've done it by 2030. So I think that's a very bold statement, and I think that's what we need. So I suppose that brings me back to how do we actually solve climate change? Well, I looked at a lot of problems, and they all cost a lot of money. But here's the thing. This number comes from the IMF fossil fuel subsidy data from 2023. The global economy is about $100 trillion. So $7 trillion in 2022 was the cost of fossil fuel subsidies in the world. About $2 trillion of that was direct subsidies. So, for example, the British government subsidized natural gas because of the cost of living crisis and COVID. And the other $5 trillion is about the cost of outputting carbon into the atmosphere. So until we acknowledge that there is a cost to doing business, how can we fix it? When these numbers say there's $7 trillion, and yet the problem to fix climate change is only $3 trillion, the answer is actually relatively simple. Stop subsidizing fossil fuels. It's as simple as that. Now, that's a big thing, but that's what we have to do. At MBS Green, what we're doing is we're working with governments. We're a B2G organization that works with them. I'm happy to answer any questions later on, but I think the key thing is that whether you do the smaller projects, and I'm not saying planting trees is small, but from the ground up or from the top down, the recognition is that we have to do something. And I think COP is going to be very interesting to see what comes out of it. And I hope at the very least, the Loss and Damage Fund gets funded by everyone. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nick. I'm now conscious of our time and will pass quickly, and I'm keen for our audience to have an opportunity to ask a question. So I'd like to dive in straight and allow time to open up the discussion on the floor. But I'm going to ask a question from each of the panelists, if I may so. Patricia, how do you see the inward and outward visitors' economy both supporting and benefiting from the emphasized place on sustainability's development and major gathering like the COP28, please?
For tourism to be sustainable, it has to deliver for the visitor, has to deliver for local communities, who have an increasing voice, and it has to deliver for businesses. And the sustainability part of that is what squares that group. So you want economic sustainability, you want some people but not too many to keep them going. You want to focus on value rather than numbers. And you want local communities that are welcoming of tourism because they see the economic and cultural benefits they give to a local community.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My second question would be to Khalid, if I may ask. As the COP28 presidency passed from Egypt to UAE, we see a huge attention across the Arab world on driving sustainability development agenda. How can the region boost investment into ambitious new projects that offer new vital revenue stream and job creation in the area, such as new technology, hospitals, leisure, as well as education and training necessary to support the agenda?
See, there are so many ways of answering this. I don't think there's a single answer for this. Number one, I think that now, as we are increasing as I mentioned in my slide, the renewable energy, this is creating an ecosystem. This is creating an ecosystem, for example, for the students in the university when they're doing the research and development, the security ecosystem, and the number of employment transferring from a technology to another technology. Today we are creating what we call a hydrogen valley. This is a hydrogen valley. Our objective as a country is actually mainly to export. And as a country of United Arab Emirates and also GCC, as you know, that historically we were depending on the energy sectors. And we want to continue doing that even when it comes to the green energy. That's why we are putting a big investments in the other sources. For example, the hydrogen. We want to be a leading in the world by exporting the hydrogen, the ammonia. So as I mentioned, that the change in the ecosystem that is going to happen in the UAE, which is already happening and is going to change rapidly in the coming few years, this will create a lot of changes in the market and will bring many new players in the market, and will have impact in the culture side before actually it have impact in the economic side.
Great, thank you so much. Rabih, you talked about the ecosystem, very great. And in terms of building the environment, particularly the transport...
Sorry, just to repeat, I think the noise...
Sorry?
There was a background noise.
Oh, sorry. In terms of building the environment, particularly the transport infrastructure, what are the emerging solutions that will serve a scalable blueprint for sustainable development while amplifying the environment protection, please?
Okay, it's a big question, especially on the logistics side and the transportations. I think there are a number of factors need to come into this. A is how to get the balance between to localize and to globalize, which is a very, very crucial. So here, setting up the essentials on the regional level is a very, very crucial. There's a lot of restructuring has to be done, to be honest with you. And the whole economy had to restructure itself based on what is essential within the region and outside it. The second one is, of course, when we talk about transportation is carbon emission. We're talking about this is where we're coming in, bringing in more of a biofuel into it from a local capacity, but engaging that rather than being a singular solution, engaging it with the livelihood of the community and adding up to that very one. So we should be really training the next generation into understanding the multi-crisis solutions rather than singularity, and making sure that we have a proper life cycle analysis deeper than what we understand at the moment. And so every step that we are taking is taking that into consideration. So I think restructuring regional and local in terms of production and demand is extremely important.
Thank you very much. Now the last question, Nick, if you can help me. Critical to our ability and close to the climate ambition gap is the mobilization of the capital and the speed and the scale. How do the policymaker and investor work together to accelerate the greening of the global economy and the success of the project that we all just heard about from your perspective, please?
I think, as you just rightly said, there's many answers to something like that. It's the overarching macro thing, which is what I tried to get across, is a, first of all, a realization of the scale of the problem. So if you have a complex problem, the only way you can solve it is to break it down into smaller pieces. So we're going to need thousands of solutions to solve the climate problem. At the heart of all of them, though, is going to be finance. So finding ways that emerging economies can afford to greenify their economies is going to be a big challenge for the world, and mainly fall on the developed world, because we put most of the CO2 into the atmosphere, and we're going to have to pay for it. But I think it's going to be the hardest part of COP, because so you need a combination of private sector and government. I think one of the COP things I've seen is that the governments want $2 of private money for every $1 of government money. Okay, so that's a good goal, but everyone wants money, so how do you prioritize it? I have a personal interest in things like carbon credits. I think there's a misunderstanding about the role carbon credits can play going forward. I think to me they're an essential piece of it. I think historically they've been used for things that people have been on the front page of The Guardian, like greenwashing, okay? Oh, someone wants to offset their carbon, let's buy a credit. If you think of it completely differently and take an economic development point of view, people who put carbon into the atmosphere at some point are going to have to be penalized or taxed for it. And people who use green fuels, sustainable energy, will have a benefit for it. So if you use a carbon credit as a transfer of wealth from polluters to green, that's going to be part of the solution. And so therefore, a carbon credit should be looked at as like an economic development tool. And you're going to need that along with lots of other things. You have to incentivize people to make some money out of this, out of the problem. And it doesn't matter what your subject is, it's a problem for everyone. But so for me, it's two parts. It's really, governments have to understand the scope of the problem, the scale of the problem, and then enact policies that makes it worthwhile for people to change.
Thank you so much. Now, thank you so much, the panel, for giving us the insight. I'm going to pause and let the audience to ask their question, if I may. And if you could kindly just put your name forward and the organization, please. Ladies.
My name is Terhas Hagos, and I represent different African governments in the climate change negotiations. And I have been participating in the negotiation for over 15 years. And my observation is that it's not only complex, the negotiation, it's highly political. And both African and Middle East countries, the need for another platform for negotiating climate change is apparent, because the climate change negotiation has become a platform less for climate change, but more for both bilateral and multilateral agreements. And it is high time that a legally binding framework is formulated for African and Middle East countries to really negotiate climate change. That's one. And the second question I want to put to Mr. Al Marzooqi is, in some of the negotiations, like in Glasgow, I had to confront the President Joe Biden, because he had come all the way from the States when his very foreign policy on the Horn of Africa is to have war. Up to now, they are trying to continue to have war. And the impact of war has more negative and adverse consequences on people's livelihood, biodiversity, more than CO2 and methane combined. Now, last year in Sharm El Sheikh, it took us almost a year to bring the issue of agriculture to be part of the climate change negotiations. We only succeeded at the last minute. And I want to see if UAE can bring the theme of war to be part of the climate change negotiations, as you see the whole global is going through war. And
Thank
one
you.
more question to
Can we
Patricia.
just, because we would like to get the other audience as well. Mr. Khalid, would you like to answer that part, please? Or Nick, whichever.
I can take
the first one.
I don't want to touch that. I think you talk about the second framework. I think one of the key things of COP28 is the stock take for Paris from 2017. The realization is that climate change is happening faster, and we're doing less than we should have done to hit those targets for Paris. Therefore, if in this COP they take a stock take and realize that we're not doing enough, we then need to do something very concrete, like the loss and damage fund. So for all the previous COPs, there's been very little, not enough financial commitment. So if you took the loss and damage fund out of COP and just said, let's get on with this and have a second framework, I think you're probably right. And if they used every COP as a stock take, as half the work, I think that would take a different angle on it. So I agree that it probably does need, well, there are many parallels going on outside of COP anyway, but there's a certain level to that. So,
Right. Thank you.
the second one.
The African one. You want to take the UAE one or take the African one? Which one do you want?
I'll take the UAE. Go ahead with that.
Right, okay. On the African one, I lived in Africa. I worked with Africa. I know Africa extremely well. I think it's a complex, going back to the same word, it's just how to deal with Africa. I mean, I think Africa, they need to realize their importance when it comes to the world scene, actually. Today, we're talking about a continent that had 30 million square kilometers, more than half our rural area. And that rural area, on one side, you might see it's like nothing there. In fact, is where majority of the land is, where the renewable energy is, where the food security is. There is something has to change rather than thinking of a natural capital. It's very much the intellectual capital that needs to be raised in Africa and to be uncovered.
I think we are conscious of the time, but we let Mr. Khalid talk.
Yeah, see, in my point of view, that I represent Abu Dhabi ports, and we are working also with COP28 for some initiatives. But I have seen that in this session, they are focusing more on the economy aspect, not just like the political aspects and the culture aspects. And for me, this is actually, it's really a right approach. And I hope this will solve many other problems, because today, as a decision maker, you have to involve the private sectors, you have to involve the companies that actually are driving the economy, driving the growth of the country. So this is the one that I see that it will hopefully have a big impact in the economy and also in the world nations.
So I would like another question, only one question at a time, please, if I may ask. Please go ahead.
The question to Fabian. So that plant has time lagging. Does that not mean the CO2 emissions are spread but at a later date?
Sorry, just...
The time lagging, the innovative plant, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's postponing the inevitable release of carbon.
I didn't get the question right.
The plant, the innovative
plant. The plant that we have, yeah.
Is it not time lagging? Is it not allowing CO2 to be released at a later date?
If I'm getting that question right, I don't know why I'm not hearing very well, but it's just the plant itself is quite a long, it's a tree, basically, that will enhance the ground itself. By itself, it does generate biofuel and actually very suited to the industry. And it's, at the same time, it does have cosmetics, it does have some medicinal stuff, is non-edible, so there's no here food security element, but it enhances the ground around it, and it does, it works extremely well with intercropping. It's a number of all sorts of levels. But we are interested in as much on the carbon element of it is the productivity of that plant itself. It takes 7 years before you start to get anything from it, but from the second year, you have the ground that is becoming more and more fertile and diverse. Hence, we're having the farmers to be part of the whole, to be stakeholders in the whole operation.
Thank you, everyone, for your contribution, and the panelists and the audience. I'm afraid we all have the time for today, and just would like to thank the panel, all the panelists sharing their experience and expertise, and look forward working with you together. Thank you so much.